Shalom Lakh Miryam meleat hachesed Adonai imach Beruchat banashim ubaruch Beri b'tnech Yeshua.
Greetings. Glory to God on the highest, and on earth, peace to people of good will. So I've recently been reading through the book Providential Accidents, which is the autobiography of the scholar Geza Vermes, or Vermes Geza, who many Americans refer to as Geza Vermes. And for those unfamiliar with Vermes, he had written a couple of different books relevant to the Dead Sea Scrolls, his work, The Complete Dead Sea Scrolls in English, being particularly popular. And aside from that, he also wrote quite a bit on the historical Jesus within the Jewish paradigm, some of which was required reading for me back when I was an undergrad decades ago. Now, one detail that might surprise some is that although Vermes was Jewish, he was also once a Catholic priest. His Jewish parents apparently converted to Catholicism when he was a little boy and raised him in the faith, and he was ordained a priest in 1950. And he served as a priest for a little over 6 years. However, one reason he left the priesthood was because he had fallen in love with a woman. And he describes how that caused an inner conflict within him, not so much because he was terribly worried about maintaining his vows of celibacy, but rather because of what implications such had for that woman in particular, as it turned out that she was married to someone else. Whatever the case, he wound up leaving the priesthood in 1957, and that woman wound up leaving her husband for Vermes. And then in 1970, Vermes, in some sense, re-embraced Judaism, but by his own admission, even as he began attending a liberal synagogue, he didn't feel much actual interest in organized religion. And so perhaps it could be said of him what he himself had said about his own father earlier in the book, when he noted that his father, too, seemed to have no interest in either Judaism or Christianity. But Vermes' story aside, I wanted to show a brief story, a fascinating story, an intriguing story, which appears on pages 60 and 61 of the book, in which Vermes discusses another Catholic priest from a Jewish background, that being Hruby. So starting at the bottom half of page 60, I'm just going to read through this on through most of page 61, and then I'm going to offer some minor comments. So jumping right in, quote, "Back in the Louvain house itself, another welcome change occurred. While the novices who started with me in 1946 withdrew one after another, new recruits replaced them. One of those was Hruby, who was to become a dear friend for many years. Son of a Christian father and a Jewish mother, Kurt was born in Austria in 1921 and migrated to Palestine with his mother after she was divorced by her husband following the Anschluss, the annexation of Austria by Hitler in 1938. For a time, Kurt worked in a religious kibbutz. His modern Hebrew was fluent and his knowledge of traditional Judaism very extensive and profound. To him, I owe my first initiation into spoken Hebrew and rabbinic literature. In Palestine, he became a Christian and found a job as a journalist at the French news agency, Agence France-Presse, before coming to Louvain. His formal link with Notre Dame de Sion was of short duration, but for many years he remained a close associate of Paul Démann in the Paris house, where I renewed contact with him between 1953 and 1957. In due course, he was ordained priest by the Belgian Bishop of Liège. He opted for an academic career, but till his dying day, he stayed inside the church. He taught Jewish studies at the Institut Catholique in Paris, published widely, and for the last 21 years of his life, edited Judaica, a German, bear with me as I go to the next page, a German language quarterly in Zurich. Although his genuine attachment to Christianity cannot be doubted, those who were as close to him as I was knew that in his heart of hearts, he felt like and probably considered himself as a 19th century Orthodox Jew. I used to enjoy his newsy letters enormously, pages and pages of them written in the German of a traditionalist last century rabbi, letters replete with biblical and Talmudic quotations, among which were interspersed arcane Hebrew and Aramaic abbreviations. I will never forget one particular episode in the house of the Fathers of Sion in Paris in the late 1950s, by which time I was no longer an insider, but a passing visitor. Though not a member of the order, Hruby had been put in charge of the place as Paul Démann's substitute during a summer vacation. As a capable handyman, he undertook the renovation and redecoration of the interior of the Sion Chapel, which in my time used to be filled with awful traditional plaster statuary. Kurt decided to get rid of the lot, I can still see him in shirt sleeves, standing in the garden on a sunny afternoon. Dozens of angels, apostles, a Jesus with a Sacred Heart painted on his chest, and several Virgin Marys wearing a white robe and a blue cape were lined up on the ground against the wall of the chapel. No doubt incensed by the sight of those horrors, Kurt lifted a monumental sledgehammer and with a naughty twinkle in his eye, smashed the statues one after the other into thousands of pieces. While doing so, he recited in Hebrew, with old-fashioned traditional Ashkenazi pronunciation, a conflated text of Psalm 96:5 and 135:15. Elohei Hagoyim Elilim Ma'aseh Yedei Adam. The gods of the nations are idols, the work of man's hand. And I'll stop there. I must confess, I'm not sure what to make of that. Was Hruby a secret iconoclast living as a Catholic priest? Or was this just a bit of dark humor with the smashed items later being replaced by superior artwork? I'm not sure, but from reading that together with the part about Hruby seeing himself as an Orthodox Jew in his heart of hearts, I fear he might have actually been an iconoclast. Oh, by the way, that surname, Hruby, is from the Czech language, and it means rough or coarse or impolite. But that aside, the whole setting is interesting in terms of the swirl of interaction between Jews and Catholicism. You see, Vermes and Hruby were not the only persons of Jewish extraction there. Note that Vermes said that Hruby was there as a substitute for Paul Démann. And Paul Démann was yet another Catholic priest from a Jewish background. And that place, Notre Dame de Sion, was itself founded by 19th century Jewish converts to Catholicism who also became priests, those being Théodore and Alphonse Ratisbonne. Now, Notre Dame de Sion, or Our Lady of Zion, actually was dedicated for decades to the task of converting Jews to Catholicism. And so more than a few Catholics of Jewish heritage passed through there, though I have read that since the publishing of Nostra Aetate, it has scaled back missionary work amongst Jews and focuses more on cordial Catholic-Jewish dialogue. But whatever the case, I'm not sure what else to say at this time. At the very least, I found this interesting, and I hope others watching this video find it interesting as well. Feel free to share any comments, questions, or criticisms, and God bless.